Today's episode is brought to you by Hidden House Coffee. Go check out their locations here in Orange County, California, or get some coffee delivered to your house at hiddenhousecoffee.com. Welcome back to the Good Dude, Good Dad podcast. I'm Jordan.
And I am Ben. And today we have Adam Allred. He's a guy, if you've seen him on Instagram, he's popped probably on your page a couple times. But we're very privileged and honored to have you on, Adam. We kind of just start every podcast like this, but basically tell us a little bit about yourself and we'll kind of just jump into it.
Cool. Yeah. Jordan, Ben, thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here. I grew up, just quick background on me. I grew up in Utah. I didn't grow up in Utah. I was born in Utah. My dad was in the military, so I grew up all over the world. We traveled until I was ready to go to college, and then I came back to Utah because my grandpa was a professor there and at the school that I went to, and I got recruited into this crazy door-to-door sales thing where you knock doors to pay for school during the summer. It's like these Mormon kids that spent 2 years knocking on doors learned how to monetize their skill set. So I got recruited in. I've knocked in all kinds of neighborhoods all over the country. Did that for 7 years in college, in the summertime to be able to pay for it. And I was making so much money in the summertime for a college kid. I was making almost $200,000 in the 3.5-4 month period after a few years of doing it that I decided to make a career out of it. I got out of college with an English degree, and I was like, dude, I'm not going to make any money teaching English, and I'm not aspiring to be a writer. So I figured I could make some money with this one singular skill set that I have. I can knock doors, and I can take a lot of damage. And so I've trained guys and girls to do that over the last 20 years. And I've seen how much that has changed their lives to be able to go out and do something really hard every single day, day in and day out, have a strategy, have coaching, have a team, a tribe around you that you're part of in these different wild parts of the country, and how much that's just completely changed the trajectory of so many of these guys that have come out and worked for us. But I've also noticed, sadly, over the course of the 20 years that I've been doing this, how watered down the next generation seems to be. Each new crop of guys seems a little less resilient, a little less aware of what it means to be a man and to step in the shoes of somebody who can go out into the world and make some order out of it and work hard and do really, really difficult things. And so this has been kind of my battle cry. Why I started social media. I started a couple years ago just kind of sharing some of the life lessons from the doors and the techniques that work with guys to be able to face up to the worst day of their lives on repeat. Because and to generalize it, because there's so many, especially men, that wake up every day just absolutely miserable. They've been handed the worst kind of programming from basically every significant institute in the country, in the world. They don't know what it means to be a man, but they're trying. They just don't know how to do it, and they're operating on this really bad programming. And to be able to help teach men how to make sense of their lives and to put together a strategy that actually starts to work is really profound. And when you see these light bulbs go off in guys' heads, it's really, really rewarding. So that was the purpose of me sharing stuff on social media, was to just try and take some of these life lessons and help other men out there who are also, waking up every morning and potentially facing the worst day of their lives, and try and help them make some sense of that.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic point of view from several aspects. But I kind of wanted to ask you a question since we're already on it with the not knowing what it means to be a man. We've had this conversation numerous times with several of the guests, but before I ask you the long stemming question is, why do you think we have this issue, or even in the 20 years you've been doing that you have noticed the generations watered down and the lack of awareness of what it means to be a man? In your space, your profession, you doing this, what is it?
Yeah, I think it's a complex issue, and I think there's a lot of parts to it. But I think the primary issue right now is the lack of masculinity in the home. I think it's families. The traditional family has been under attack for a long time, and we're seeing the fruits of what that looks like, where you either remove the man physically from the home because he leaves, because he wasn't a good man to begin with, and he abandons the family, which happens all too much, or because he's pushed out of the home by a really toxic woman who, you know, she makes it impossible for him to stick around by her nature, or because he's been mitigated to something of like a bystander, where he's not doing the parenting, the woman is doing the parenting. And I've seen this firsthand. Like when I've gone out and knocked doors, I've been in literally thousands and thousands of homes all over the country, and it surprised me to see how often men couldn't make decisions in the home, but the females could. You would knock on the door and the man would be there and you'd be like, hey, I need to talk to my wife. A lot of times these guys wouldn't even have like a credit card. Like their wife didn't even allow them to have a card. So he's like, I want to do this. I know my wife would love this, but I got to wait for her to get home because she's got the credit cards. It's just mind blowing to me, but it's happened so often over the years of me knocking doors that I'm not surprised by it anymore. But I think that's what we're seeing is we're just seeing like really absent masculinity or really weak masculinity in a home. And so you have these boys that are being raised predominantly by females, and they go into a school system that's run predominantly by females, and they come out of that whole process having no idea what it means to be a man. They're basically a yes men to females, because that's how women will raise their sons. They're going to raise their sons to be nice. They're going to raise their sons to do what they say. And so these young men are coming into adulthood, and they're not even looking for a wife. They're looking for a mother. They don't articulate it that way, but they're looking for a woman to give them purpose. I remember in college, man, I had so many of my buddies who felt like their life couldn't start until they found a woman, until they found a wife to come in and give their life purpose. And it's just such a horrible way to start off a relationship, because that guy is going to end up miserable and unhappy. At some point, he's going to wake up and just look around and be like, dude, my life is really just me checking off boxes of responsibility that somebody else has handed to me. And it doesn't make women happy. It's intensely unattractive to women when they have a guy that's a yes man that's basically just ready to do anything they ask him to do. And so I think this is the biggest issue, is the absence of masculine fathers in the home.
I love that. So I've been, I have to say multiple times, I have a group of young men that I've been mentoring kind of over the years. And I remember one in particular, he's like, man, I really want to get married. I really, really want to get married. He just like, he hyper focuses on it. And I was like, hey man, like desperation smells, and it doesn't smell good, and anyone around you can smell it. I was like, not only that, man, why don't you just focus on being the man that, the right type of woman that you'd want to marry is attracted to? Because if you focus more on that, on being the right type of man, holding up to the values you say you hold up to, keeping the promises you say you're going to keep, and being the type of masculinity and man that she would want, I bet you're going to find your wife that way, other than just going fishing all the time, because it apparently is not working. So I love how you said that, man. I also love how you talked about, there's also points where there's women that create really toxic households, and they completely run everything, and it's that's tough. I mean, so how would you say to like the young man that was raised by, a single mother, raised by, not having any men, dad didn't stay in the household, that kind of stuff? What would you say to him if he's looking for masculinity or trying to figure out his masculinity without having that example?
Surround yourself by as many masculine men as you can. Whether that's a football coach, whether that's a pastor, whether that's whether that's online, finding influencers, finding people that you trust, whose message is resonating, and podcasts, YouTube, whatever that looks like. Just constantly surround yourself with influences of strong men who are doing what you want to do in the world. Like, look at what guys are doing, and if that guy's life is what you want your life to look like, then surround yourself by that guy, as much as you possibly can. And that doesn't have to be somebody that Some of my biggest mentors, most of my mentors, are people that I've never met, but they're people I listen to like every single day, podcasts, or their books that I've read, authors that I read, just everything that they write. Because that's really what's going to, paradigm and accountability, or programming and accountability, is what changes behavior. And so if you're in a place where you don't want to be, it starts with you holding yourself accountable, and that looks like discipline, making some decisions, deciding exactly what you want to be, spend some time, like, what is it that I want to be? And then surrounding yourself with people that are doing that as much as you can.
Yeah, I mean, we are who we hang out with, whether people want to admit it or not. It's something we've talked about. It's something I feel like you've probably talked to. I feel like every man that knows who they are, at least, understands that you are eventually going to turn into what you surround yourself with. So if you're surrounding yourself with low caliber people, you're probably going to perform at a low caliber. If you're surrounding yourself, on the streets, you're probably going to find yourself on the streets. But I think people don't realize, especially men specific, obviously, we don't realize the power in what we're doing right now. The conversations that we're having, the things that need to be said, I think it's something that's been so underrated and underutilized forever because it wasn't, masculine enough to be able to have the space to talk. But, the more I've gotten older and as a father, I've realized, man, is the more communities, the more conversations, the more things like this, it brings the best version of me out, right? It makes me the better man for my wife, for my kids, and again, it's something I would have never understood, right? Like when I came home from the Marine Corps, you couldn't pay me to sit there and talk about it. I was like, oh, dude, that's whack. You're soft. I'm not talking about that. I don't need to. I came back from combat and I realized, oh, I'm invincible or I'm tough or, no, we don't need to talk. But the reality of it is men need this. They need what you're doing, listening to your messages and how blunt and vocal you are about some of it, right? That's what it takes sometimes to kind of get through somebody. And I went on a tangent for no reason, but what I wanted to ask you was, how did you yourself define what a masculine man was while you were, knocking doors and building this culture you were doing?
Yeah, no, great question. But first, I just want to jam on what you said earlier because I think that's really profound. One of the things that we have lost in our modern society is our tribes. We have been conditioned to give those up. My church, for example, it's like when you get married, that's your whole why, and you're supposed to sacrifice everything else to that, and you get occasionally some time with your buddies, but mostly it's just geared towards going to work and then coming home and being at home. And I'm a family man. I believe in taking care of your wife. I believe in taking care of your kids. But the truth is, it's not a good woman that makes a good man. I think that's one of the worst things that we say, and we just say it without thinking about it. Good women don't make good men. Good men make good men. It's not your wife's job to make you a good man. It's not her job, and it should never be. Now, women amplify us. Women are multipliers. So if you're a good man and you marry a good woman, she's going to make you infinitely better. And I can attest to that from my marriage that I'm in right now. My wife is a huge, powerful influence for making me better, but she didn't turn me into a good man. It was surrounding myself with guys that were good, having these types of conversations, leveling up, doing hard things with other men, whether that's on a football field or whether that's in knocking doors or whether that's in the Marine Corps or whatever else, having guys that you're surrounded with that you can resonate well with. And there's so much research that shows how important it is for men to spend time with other men. And we know this, we've evolved this way. Men from the beginning of time sat around fires and traded war stories every single night. They'd come back and how are we going to keep the tribe alive? Where are we going to hunt? Who are we going to war with? And if you weren't a man, you didn't survive. And so men got together and they planned everything out. And this was just baked into our evolution. This is baked into the fabric of every healthy society, is strong men sitting around the literal or proverbial campfire, trading war stories and leveling each other up. That is what makes a man strong, is who you surround yourself with. And I can't emphasize that enough. So for me, I went through a really tough first marriage. And it was tough for a multitude of reasons, but one of them was just because I didn't understand how to be a strong man in that relationship. We get conditioned, particularly by the feminine energy, but we get conditioned as men that if we are nice, if we are sweet, if we tolerate things, that life is going to be nice back to us. Our wife will be nice back to us. And then we get in this victim mode where I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to be doing. I'm a nice guy. I'm doing this and this. But why isn't the world nice to me? You can't nice the world into being nice back to you. The only option you have as a man, if you want a successful, fulfilling life, is to be a strong man, which means you have to have brothers around you to be able to do that. It's the only way that I know how this works. And so for me, when one of the things I did fundamentally wrong in that first marriage was I gave up my tribe of friends. I would rarely see them. And that was the expectation my wife had on me. She didn't want me hanging out with my friends. That was the expectation church had handed to me, is like, your wife is your life, happy wife, happy life, da 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 da. So that's just what I thought was how it was supposed to work. And that was not the reason why it was bad, but that was a big part of it, was me basically cutting off the things that made me a man in order to be the nice guy for my wife. And it just didn't work. And so when I got out of that marriage, one of the first things I did was reunite with my buddies.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were going through divorces at the same time. There was something in the water. We were kind of going through this whole thing, and we started banding together. And man, it was like just light bulbs were going off my head. It was like oxygen came back in the room. I started feeling like a man again. I started executing like a man again. I started getting in that frame of mind, like I need to level up and I got to be a strong man, not a nice guy. And I can't just name one thing specifically that helped me to reorient myself towards life for the second half that I had, because I got divorced when I was about 40. So I was like, man, I got a second half of life. What is it going to look like? But having those guys around me was just so healthy.
Yeah.
And life just made so much more sense. And that was something that I realized. I was like, I'm never, ever giving up my friends ever again. Like my friends, this are my family. They are the family that I choose. You have the family you're born with, and you have the family that you choose. And if somebody has a problem with your friends, they fundamentally have a problem with you, because those are a reflection of you. Now, yeah, there's guys with bad friends, and you recognize if you got a bad egg or a bad influence, you got to be aware of that, and you got to either mitigate that or remove it. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about decent guys, good buddies that you're hanging out with. That's my family. Those are guys that mean something to me. And so if a girl comes along and she's like, I don't like him and I don't like him, and particularly if they're like, I don't like her, it's not a good fit. Those are huge red flags for that relationship. And so when I got a resounding endorsement from all of my buddies for my wife now, I knew I was on the right track. And when she just vibed with them, she loves to this day hanging out with my friends. My friends are now some of her best friends. It just made our relationship so much healthier and so much better.
That's awesome. I have a good buddy of mine that's going through a tough time right now. And we literally grabbed breakfast the other morning. We were sitting down. He goes, hey, man, like, I can't tell you how much, because we all live together, a big group of my friends, we all grew up together since we were 5, played hockey together, did all this different crazy stuff together. But we all lived together at one point, and we would go out almost every night and sit in the backyard. We had a big fire pit. We'd have a big fire. Back then we drank way too much beer, but we just talked, and we talked through a lot of stuff. We talked through, a dad who drank himself to death. We talked through some family stuff where there was a murder in the family. We talked through, girl problems. We talked through life problems. We talked through, back then we were all working on an ambulance or a fire engine at that time. We talked through, bad calls that we saw that week. And he, we were at breakfast in the morning. He's like, dude, what I wouldn't give to have kept that going. He's like, I think that's one place that we all failed, is that we didn't keep that going. And it sent me into a dark place. And I know it sent me personally into not a great place either. And I still, to this day, crave that time. So it's something that we're working on actually bringing back. But I love how you spoke into that, because we were, we've grown up from the beginning of time sitting around with other men, telling stories. It wasn't like, I saw this one statistic talking about PTSD coming back from war. They said there wasn't as much, they don't think, because there was this time that happened between when you left the battlefield and it took you so long to get home that you sat with your buddies every day and you talked and you processed and you went through, you replayed all these things that happened to you. And now there's this thing where, you leave combat or you leave these bad situations. The next day you're just right back at home with your family. I think being around a group of good men, like you were saying, is pivotal to manliness, to be honest. Mm-hmm. It's a pivotal part of manliness. Did you have I have a question, but did you have something you wanted to? Hey guys, quick break. This is Jordan with Good Dude, Good Dad. Huge shout out to our sponsor, Hidden House Coffee. Get 15% off your next order by going to hiddenhousecoffee.com and using the code GDGD15. It'll be in the details and description down below. Make sure you subscribe, and a huge shout out to Road as well. Now back to the show.
I was just going to say, this is going to take us on a different tangent, but I want to pose the question of why have we been conditioned to think this way? Like, why has there been this idea? Where does it stem from that us men don't need that? because you go online, right? And I can tell you right now, there's a bunch of women groups, right? Or mom groups and all these things. What do you both think on the why we were / are conditioned to think that way?
Do you want to go with that, Jordan, or you want me to answer
Yeah,
that
no,
first?
go for it.
Well, this is going to be a rabbit hole. It's going to make me sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I'll just shoot it to you like my opinion on it.
Yeah.
Like, I think you have the working class people versus the elite. I think that's how it's always been since the beginning of time. Like, there's always been this conflict between those who are in power, trying to stay in power, and the rest of us. And to the people in power, we are livestock. We are a resource. That's what we are. That's the lens that's the only lens that makes sense when I see all the stuff that's going on in the world right now. And how do you control a livestock, this large portion of the population, majority of the population, if that population is strong? If you have a bunch of bulls in the herd that are ready to speak up, fight up, act up, and they band together, it's a dangerous thing to the power apparatus. And so I think there's been a concerted effort through the rise of feminism, through the, this idea of toxic masculinity, through the try and reconstruct the traditional family to whatever sort of thing that is, that there's been a concerted effort to create this chaos and this confusion and this isolation among the population, particularly among men, because we're easier to control. That's what I really think. And you can look at, there's a million different, facets through which this is being pushed. And so it's easy to isolate and focus on just one thing, but I think that's the bigger picture. I think there's a real effort to try and keep men weak. I mean, to the point now where men don't even know if they're men anymore. I mean, this is how insane things have gotten, right? We're like starting to accept this as normal. It's like, yeah, I mean, I don't want to assign gender to my kid. Let my kid decide what they want to be. And it's just gotten to such an extreme boiling point. But I think it really stems, I don't think it's accidental. I don't think this is just the natural evolution of humanity. I don't think it's because of the industrial age, the ushering into that. I don't think it's any of that. I think it's really like a concerted effort to try and break us up and isolate us and keep us weak and confused.
I told a buddy of mine pretty recently that I was like, I think a lot of what happened over the last, especially the last 20 years, is that I'm not saying all our strong men went off to war, because I didn't serve, so I didn't go anywhere. I was still here. But I think that they sent a lot of really strong men off to war, and gave them the perception that they were taking care of everything at home. And then during that time, isolated individuals, and it just kind of weakened they weakened it. I think you're right. I think there was an actual effort to weaken masculinity, and it's pretty clear. I mean, you look at TV shows. Dad's always dumb in the corner. Dad, you can't do anything right. What are you doing? And he's a slob, and he's usually fat, and he's overweight, and he's kind of
Homer Simpson.
Yeah, he's a half step behind everyone else, and it's like it's been a slow chipping away process. And then now it's come to a point where these men have come home, or men have looked up from our work and go, what the frick happened here? And it's like, okay, well, it's time to take things back. I mean, if we're gonna get this crazy, it's time to set things straight, because it's that time old tale. Hard men make good times make soft men make hard times, and we're in the hard times now. So it's like, okay, well, now we gotta get, men gotta harden up and make good times again, because this is getting insane. It's just getting insane.
Now that you guys are saying that, I'm replaying, like, I'm thinking of like our childhoods, or further down that line is like, you think of Al Bundy, right? That was like a popular TV show. And now I'm like thinking about him, I'm like, oh, dude, that guy was like the laughing joke of the whole TV show. Like, his kids walked all over him, his wife walked all over him, and that was like a thing. Where you said Homer Simpson, it's like you look at these things and it's like, oh man, I guess it has been, quote unquote, preconditioned to us forever. And then you have the one man that once in a while pops up, right? Like MJ was on everything, then it's like you have these individual men that step up, but the rest of everyone is just still down below, like, man, that guy's cool. I want to be him, but I can't. And I think it is I think that's a topic and an idea that I hope we can fix as a generation. And I look at my kids. I have two boys, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I hope that I'm doing my best freaking job that I can to make sure I raise these boys to turn into good men, because the way we're going and the trajectory we're on, the three of us in this room or this meeting, we're outnumbered drastically. And it's freaking terrifying when I think of like our children, our sons. And yeah, now I'm kind of just lost in my own thoughts of thinking like, oh, crap, dude.
But I think this is such a good place for us to be honest with you. Like, this is a place that gives me hope, because I think when things get really bad is when people start to wake up. And we're seeing this right now with the rise of this on social media. We're seeing so many men like yourselves that are going out, sharing messages, pulling guys together, even if that's in a virtual space, leveling up. We're seeing these coaching groups coming together. And I think when things get the darkest, that's when men really start to step up and own their shit. And so to me, I'm seeing the pendulum swing. And I say, bring it on, man. Let's get after this. We got work ahead of us, but we're going to win this fight. Like, this isn't a doom and gloom. It's just trying to be honest about how we got here and why we got here and what the role is, the responsibility that we have as men to step up and start making some changes. And just going back to this idea of like the Al Bundys or whatever, knocking thousands of doors in my life, now this social media journey, but and just in my own personal experiences, the majority of wives that I talk to, they don't talk about their husbands with respect. They talk about them like they're tolerating, like these eye rolls. Oh yes, that's it. It's not like they respect their man. And because they don't respect their man, they're actually not attracted to him. And so this is a huge problem in marriages. Women think they want a guy that's like, a glorified lapdog that they can tell what to do. And they're wired with all this toxic programming that their job is to neuter their man as fast as they can, to housebreak him or whatever that looks like. And the truth is the second that man allows himself to be neutered is the moment she loses respect and attraction for him. And that's why you see so many guys going around in sexless marriages. Is because they've lost the respect of their women. And this is not a woman issue. Like we talk about it. I try to talk about it straight on my social media platform. I'm not blaming women for this. Yeah, this is the symptom. Toxic women is the symptom of weak men. That's what it is. Because if men are strong, everything else in society falls in line and makes sense. And when men are weak, everything starts going sideways. And so that's why we're seeing this whole rise of this insane feminist movement that's like, hates all men, but then as quickly as they say they hate toxic men, they're turning this women into toxic men, and they're parading them around like that's some sort of step forward for females, and nobody's happy. Like, have you ever met a feminist that's happy?
No.
Literally, like I outset, and it's an honest question. I'd like to hear one feminist that doesn't just come across bitter and shrill and angry. It's like nobody's happy for this. But it's because we've tolerated this. We've allowed this to happen as men. We've been asleep on our watch. And because of that, now we're in this really dark place in this society where there's so much confusion and there's so much just absolute nonsense, and the circus is on full parade. And now this is our time as men. It's like the Goonies, where they're like, that's their time. This is our time. Like this is our time, man. Like it's our time as guys to start making some changes, and it's exciting because I think we're going to do it. I think we're going to start pushing back, and this pendulum is going to swing the way back to where it should be.
I think we're already starting to see it. I really do. And just like you said, becomes a power vacuum. When a man doesn't step up and lead as a man, there's got to be someone in the household that takes charge, and the woman then steps up. But that's not her role. That's not what she was designed to do, and that's not a knock on women. They have amazing strength, but we don't have the same chemistry. We don't have the same body makeup. We don't have the same. We're specifically designed for two different roles, not one that's more important than the other, but they're supposed to come together to create a family and a family unit that is, helpful and purposeful in this world. So that being said, we're saying, hey, we're in the muck and the mire, but we're seeing hope. We need to grow out of it. What are you doing? Like you were saying earlier, you see this watered down generation coming, each one coming in. You're taking these young men who are stepping into this. So I'll say my cousin does door-to-door sales. He was a very, very shy kid. That's actually my wife's cousin. Sorry, Austin, if you hear this. He was a very shy kid. Him and I, like when I was having conversations with him before, I'd be like, yeah, dude, cool. Do you have a heartbeat? Like, are you still there? And now he's turned into this robust, awesome man that just has purpose and drive, and he's leaned in. He's read just a countless amount of books. He's doing jujitsu with Jocko down in San Diego now, and he goes around the
Oh,
United
let's
States.
go.
Yeah, he goes around the United States, for a chunk of time selling stuff, and just seeing him grow into a man has been so refreshing over the last few years. So when you take this man that comes to you, or this boy that comes to you, that's interested in growing, and I understand that part of it is they have to lean in, but how do you kind of start that process of building them up, because knowing that they're going to go out and fail constantly, and also what's the importance of going out and failing constantly?
Those are good questions.
Yeah, that's such a good question, and I'd just give my 2 cents on that. I think every man has the same purpose in life. And so this is where it starts if I'm talking to young men. It's the same thing. The primary purpose of a man is to be the best version of himself. End of story. That's it. That's your primary role, is to level up and be the very best human being, competent, strong, vibrant, expanding person that you can possibly be. Your purpose is not to be a husband. Your purpose is not to be a father. Those are side quests. Those are intensely important side quests. But that is not your purpose, because until you are good at being a man first, you're never going to be good at being a husband, and you're never going to be good at being a father. You just won't. God made us to be men first. And so until we learn how to do that first, that's our purpose. God made you to be a strong man. That's what you're supposed to evolve into. And so until you can realign your priorities, it's not to go out and get a career. It's not to go out and get a wife. It's to level myself up. Nothing else is going to make sense in life. And the only way that you can level up, the only way, is to go through hard things. There's no way to get stronger and better unless there's resistance. So it's recognizing that we have a purpose to level up, and that adversity, this world of entropy that we step out our front doors into, is perfectly designed to help us do that. And it's the only way to do it. So when you start looking at life and it's no longer happening to you, but it's happening for you, we hear this all the time. People say, I don't know where the quote came from, but it was brilliant. Life's not happening to you, it's happening for you. When that paradigm shift happens, in that moment, you are endowed with power as a man, and things really start to make a lot more sense in your life. And so it's going out and it's doing hard things. And we say, and I absolutely believe it, the man is supposed to lead. But it's not because he's a man. That's not why a man is supposed to lead. What gives a man the authority to lead is competency. That's what it is. Competency is always the precursor for authority. So until you are competent, you can't lead, and you don't have any right to lead. And so when you have a weak man in a relationship, it forces a woman to step into that role of competency because he's weak. He's not executing. And too many guys, we were talking about this earlier, go into this world of being the nice guy, and they think, well, if I'm nice, nice will give back to me. It's not how it works. And women aren't attracted to nice guys. Women are attracted to a good man, and a good man is a strong man. That's the only thing a woman is attracted to, is a strong man. Every single woman out there on the planet wants to marry somebody better than them. They want somebody that is better than them. They're looking for a guy that can lead, a guy that is competent, a guy they can feel safe with, a guy they can feel secure with, a man who knows how to manage the world outside, a man who can come home and knows how to manage her and her emotions. And I don't mean control. I don't mean like boss. I don't mean being tyrannical. I mean knowing what buttons to push, what levers to pull. When she feels this way, how do I execute there? How to hold boundaries, how to have accountability in your relationship, how to create that takes so much power as a man to be able to go into a relationship and manage it in a way that it makes it healthy. Otherwise, we're just setting everything up for failure. So as men, we have the primary responsibility to level up. We have a primary responsibility to do that through adversity and to become competent so we can step into the world and we can make the world a better place. It's not so that we can go take for ourselves. The idea of becoming competent and powerful is so that those on our watch we can take care of in a meaningful way.
Dude, that's so good. That is so good. From that,
Thanks.
from that, I want to ask you, because we want to be respectful of your time here too. So, I mean, I could do this all day long, man, all day long. I love these conversations.
Me too. I love these conversations.
But to you, what makes a good dude and a good dad?
So, I mean, there's a lot of different offshoots that you can go off on that, but I think what makes a man a man. So let me back up for a second. I think there's 3 types of men in this world. There's the lost boy, there's the adolescent male, and then there's the comprehensive man. Those are my terms for it. So these are just things of how I make sense of things. And the lost boys are what we've just been talking about. kids that have been raised predominantly by females have no idea what they want, where they're going. They don't know what their purpose is. They're rolling into adulthood, and they're basically just boys that can shave now. That's the lost boy generation. I think there's so much of that. And then you have the adolescent male, which is somebody who realizes that they can go into the world and make sense out of it, but they do it for selfish reasons. It's like, what can I take? How many girls can I sleep with? How much money can I get? How much can I build my ego up? That's the adolescent male. And then you have the comprehensive man. And the difference between the lost boy and the other two categories, a man is someone who can go into the world and impose his will on it. That's what a man is. Whether that's going into the workforce, whether it's going into a relationship, whether that's stepping into the fatherly role, whatever that looks like, your ability to impose your will on the world around you is what defines you as a man. And a good man is doing it to make the world a better place, and a bad man is doing it so he can take what he can get from it.
I like that a lot. I haven't thought about it in 3 different categories.
That adolescent male that's a dangerous thing too, because we're seeing a rise of, unfortunately, that too as well. Of young men who think they know what it means to be masculine, or they want to sound like they know what it means to be masculine, and they can do just as much harm. It's like that. It's like the old lion and that young immature lion that tries to come in and run the herd and just creates a giant mess. They think they know what it really means, and they just don't. I know you have some, Salo.
Oh, no, I was just going to share. We were talking about kind of like different, reasons in our positions as men. And something that for me, it was just like something so simple, but it made me, it was one of those moments where my wife sent me like a random reel. And I was like, dang, it was what I needed at the time, I think. But it's just these 2 lions. It's kind of hard to see. You can see it here, but
That's fine. I didn't see the lion part.
it's 2 lions. I'll try to show you.
Oh, yeah, back it up.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
So it's these 2 lions, and it literally just says, it's a female lion in the front with a freaking big old male lion in the back, and it says, she fears absolutely nothing, or she fears absolutely nothing. What the heck is wrong with me? She fears absolutely nothing that's in front of her because she knows exactly who's behind her. And it's, the male lion just kind of just by her. And I think if we look at men in that perspective, in our roles as whatever, even if you're not a husband, but you want to be, it's the same thing. Or if you're just, you're a boyfriend to a girlfriend, it's the same freaking thing, right? She should never have to worry about what's in front of her because she knows who's behind her. And that hit me when she sent it to me. She was sitting right next to me and she sent it to me. And I was like, oh, dang. Like, that's what's up, But
I love your definition too of a man that can go in and impose his will, and he does it for good. You just imagine the type of family, like I'm speaking more to the audience than I am to you, Adam, but like imagine the type of family that you would have if they knew that they had the kind of dad that could go in and handle it if it needed to be handled. Imagine the kind of how empowered your wife would be, how empowered your sons would be, how empowered your daughter would be. No daughter wants to get picked up by their boyfriend and their dad just like, well, have a good time. There's a sense of pride that you have when you have that dad that's like, hey, you're going to treat her right. You're going to have her back by a certain time, or I'm going to hunt your body down, and there's I know that for a fact because my daughter loves that too. So it's like, I love your definition of that. So that being said, now we have the definition of what makes a good dude, good dad. I want to ask you, if someone is out there looking for one actionable step that they can take today, a young man, a guy that's, currently married, a guy that's, maybe a little bit later on in life, that's trying to re-find his masculinity, what's one actionable step that you would give them right now?
Well, the first thing is that person has to define what that is. Okay, if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there, right? And so we can talk about masculinity, and it's a broad term, and we have our definitions, but even saying imposing your will in the world, that's a pretty broad term. So it's like sitting down with yourself and having a real heart-to-heart. And this isn't something you do in an afternoon. This is something that I think that takes a lot of time, and it evolves. You don't just arrive. It's like you're going to change that definition as you step into different roles in your life. But you got to decide, what is it that I want to be? If I could wave a magic wand and imagine myself as the most powerful, vibrant version of myself, what does that guy look like? What is he doing? What characteristics does he have? And so you first get that in your head, and now you have something you can start moving towards. And now you can start constructing a game plan. You can start surrounding yourself with other men in your proximity that are doing the same thing, that have the same vision, that are working towards the same goals. You can start ingesting good programming, because ultimately programming is what changes everything. What you listen to and what you read and who you talk to determines how you think. Everybody, we all think we're free thinkers, and none of us are. There's not one of us that's a free thinker. All of us are operating on programming. And the only choice that we have is not really how the programming is going to work. We just have the choice of what programming we put in.
Yeah.
That's really the only choice. And most people aren't even conscious of that. They're just, and this is why so many people are lost and so many people are in quiet places of desperation and just kind of going through life in this zombie state, is because they're just constantly being programmed by all of these sources around them, and they're not even aware of it. So it's like waking up and recognizing, I'm going to think by what I put into my head. Mm-hmm. And we understand how this works with food, right? Like you eat a carrot and it's going to do what a carrot does when it goes into your system. And you eat a brownie and or you eat a brownie and it's going to do what a brownie is going to do. You don't have a choice of how that's going to turn out once it goes into your system. But you get to choose which one you're going to eat. And that is just as applicable to what we put into our heads. So if you're sitting there just mindlessly scrolling through stuff, you're putting junk food in your head, you're going to be thinking junk thoughts. Mm-hmm. That's what's going to happen. That's going to be the production of it. So if you want to start making these changes, decide what is it that you want to be, and then organize your life in a way that you are inundating that type of content, that type of conversation, those types of influences in your life. And the beautiful thing is, there's no quick answers here. Nothing happens quick. But the beautiful thing is when you start to do that, you no longer have to white knuckle your way into change, which never works anyways. You can't just force yourself to start thinking differently because you had an epiphany one time. Yeah. You know, you listen to a motivational speech and now like, oh, I'm going to go run through walls. That lasts for about, 20 minutes, 2 hours if you're lucky, and then it's gone. Like, you never really can force yourself to change just by sheer force of will. But what you can do is change your programming, and then your world will just naturally change. Your outlook will start naturally changing. And we manifest our own worlds by how we think, the energy that we put into the world, how we think, how we speak, and how we act. That's the energy that we put into the world. And when we change the way we think, we change the way we speak, we change the way we act, our world around us changes.
I love that. I love how that ties into earlier, too, when you said that some of the best mentors you had were not people that you even had direct access to, but people that you listened to and read, constantly. And that's such hope for young men and men that are trying to be better versions of yourself, is that, maybe you are in a, being raised by a single mom and you want to figure out what it's like to be a man and you don't have access to that person. There's the great thing about social media and the worst thing about social media are kind of the same thing, is that there's so much out there, but also there's so much good and there's so much bad. But if you find that good, you have so many more resources than we did, in the 80s and 90s and all that kind of stuff. You have access to people like you. You have access to podcasts like this. You have access to things that can help teach you the things that you need to learn to be the best version of yourself and the best man you can be. I love that.
Yeah. No, that's good, man. I kind of just want to give a quick little recap. There's a lot of resources in what you say and what you're doing, but we're living in a watered down generation. We are all seeing, the tide kind of turning with the amount of men out there. And honestly, until we started doing this podcast, I don't think you would have ever come across my profile, because now I'm starting to look for it. I'm seeing these things. I wasn't using my social media for, a brotherhood community. I was using it for whatever, a lot of jujitsu videos and gun videos, but outside of that, I didn't even know how many of us there are that are currently doing this. And that did, give me hope. Just like you said, Adam, of like, dude, you see it. It's happening. This is the time where, we will rise up and fix it. But another overview that you said is just getting in a space where you are putting the work in. A lot of guys will be willing to put work into making money, right? So they'll spend hours on how to learn how to trade or watching, currency trading and crypto and all this other stuff, but they're not willing to invest into themselves. And I think understanding that there's an actual dire need to invest in yourself at a level that is constant and like you said, it has to evolve and it has to change. Like, you set your game plan, you're never going to stick to that game plan. It has to change. It has to adapt, because if not, you're just going to stay stagnant. And so, applying all these things is so important. And I think the biggest one that is the most important is finding a space that you can genuinely share who you are, where you're at, your highs, your lows, your struggles, and having a group keep you accountable. I think the accountability component too is something I never understood, because I guess I just never had to. Playing sports, you were accountable to someone. I didn't view it that way back then because that's just what you did. You played a sport, you were accountable to your teammates and your coach. And then, military, you're accountable to someone. I got out, opened my first business. I'm accountable to the people that I employ and the customers that come in. But, getting married, I have an accountability partner in my wife. And as a father, I have an accountability partner in my children. And there's so many different ways that I didn't realize accountability means things and talking means things, and just, being willing to accept that. I think we need to break that mold of people that might be listening to this and think the three of us are just crazy. Like we're not crazy. It's needed. And I hope you hear that. And that's my biggest hope for this platform, is letting people like Adam share their story and share what you're doing, letting Jordan share a story, letting Joe Schmo. But, that's kind of like my recap for it.
That's awesome. Hey, Adam, can you do me a favor? Can you give us a plug of where people can find you and where they can use you as a resource if they're looking to be a better man?
Yeah, absolutely. Adam Allred Official on all the social media platforms. Come join the party. And I don't pretend like I've got it figured out, right? None of us do. It's a process for every single one of us. But as we go down this road in life and we acquire experience and we acquire context and wisdom, we have a responsibility to share that with others, as imperfect as it may be, to share these things, especially with the next generation of men. I feel like it's a sacred duty that every man has, is to pass on what they've learned to others. And so that's really what my page is all about. It's just really trying to share with people things that I think, particularly with men, things that I think are most important to them. So feel free to push back. I'm not the gospel. I'm not the end all to the discussion on anything. I speak with conviction because I think wherever you're at in life, you should be convicted. You should stand strongly where you're at. But I think with openness, I constantly am trying to be more aware and peel back the layers of my own bullshit, my own self-deception. I'm constantly trying to pursue the truth. I don't think the truth is something that you arrive at. I think it's something that you spend your entire life working towards, and you get to peel back layers of it and experience more and more of it, and it's encouraging and it's motivating. So yeah, come be part of the party and be part of the discussion in the comment sections, and feel free to push back and challenge the points that I make. I think that's really, really healthy thing.
I love that, man. That's not to toot your horn, but that's the sign of a true man, is one to say that, hey, I don't have it all figured out, and two, accepting pushback. Like, hey, if you don't agree with me, let's talk about it. At least we're having a conversation versus just ignoring it, So, man, thank you again.
And I've literally had my opinions changed.
Yeah.
I've been making content for like 2 years, and I've had more than a couple of times. I've had, in the comment section, someone's like pushes back, and most of the time it just gets me more entrenched in my position because their arguments are weak, and I'm like, you didn't convince me, and so I just blast back or I don't reply because you got only a certain amount of hours in the day. But there have been a number of times I've gotten into discussions in the comment section. I'm like, man, they're making a better point than me. I need to rethink this. And then my thought process will evolve. So it's actually personally really healthy for me to be engaged in that to the extent that I have the time to. I think it is important, to your point, as men, that we are open-minded to things and that we don't just get entrenched in one way of thinking like we've got something figured out. Because as soon as we're certain of anything, certainty is death. I mean, certainty is spiritual death. It stops your progression. It keeps you from growing and developing. It's about keeping yourself open-minded, not accepting stuff just because someone said it. You weigh it out and test it, and if it doesn't add up, don't accept it. But if somebody's making a better point than you, own that. You don't have to be right. You want to do what's right, not be right, in my opinion.
Yeah. I forget which philosopher it was, but he said, like, the more that you find out, or the more knowledgeable you become, you realize the less that you actually know. And it's like, I feel like Ben and I we're doing that in having this podcast and talking with people. It's like, the more that we're having these conversations, the more I'm like, man, I don't really know anything at all.
Amen.
But it's so refreshing at the same time, because it's like, we're obviously gaining knowledge, but realizing in that gaining of knowledge that, like, man, we're just figuring it out. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Well, Ben, Thank you for an awesome
Yeah,
podcast.
my dude. Adam, thank you again for taking the time out. We know you're busy. We hope somebody gets something from it. That's what Jordan and I kind of say all the time is we want this to be a platform for other men, for a female that listens to it and wants to, nudge somebody gently. Send them an episode. Send them Adam's profile. Send them any of the people that we've had on. Like our goal is to just bring value. That and whatever that value is, that's all we care about is just adding value to people's lives.
Yep. So I will link all of
And
Adam's info down below so that you can check him out and get a hold of him. Go join his crew and see what's going on. But guys, remember, we're all learning something. This is just a process. We're all figuring it out. But masculine men are an important part of our world, and they're necessary and they're needed. And so we hope that you got something from today. We hope that you enjoyed it. And remember, be a good dude, be a good dad.